Europe's value proposition.
Thank you,
Welcome.
Tomas.
Thank you. And
Yes, please. Thank you, Tomas. Thank you so much. I think it's not the lunch that might bring us down, but the stairs. I recommend that next time, perhaps we should have less stairs and more stage. I don't know, Tomas. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon with this great panel. My name is Fátima Caçador. I am a journalist and editor of SAPTech. I work in technology for more than 30 years, and so I will be trying to moderate and keep up with these very brilliant people that we have here. Although we don't have Diogo, so I will ask everyone to be even a little bit more, I don't know, polemic if you want. But the energy is here, and of course we have a lot of knowledge here with us. The idea is to talk about the need to develop a competitive and attractive proposition to generate more research and advanced solutions in Europe, and also the conditions for the innovation ecosystem, supporting the growth of startups, scale-ups, unicorns, if possible, if possible, in Europe. Well, we have a lot of experience here from different sizes, from creating startups and unicorns, and also from the side of supporting them, if we can say that.
It's a good word. Yeah. Supporting is a good word.
Supporting is a good word. So Cristina Fonseca has already been presented as the general partner of Indico Capital Partners, also the founder of TalkDesk and Clever AI, now Zendesk. And Luís Roquete Geraldo is the chairman of the General Assembly of ESNA. I never know if I'm pronouncing it well.
You are.
So, Europe Startup Nations Alliance, and also a partner at Moraes Leitão. And we have also Sam Ria, Vice President, Strategic Advisor for Emerging Technology and Incubation of Cloudflare, who moved to Portugal 5 years ago and now speaks better Portuguese than I do English. So,
É verdade. Falou um bocadinho.
Congrats. Well, now we can start with the questions, and so we want to talk about this, how Europe can cope, or at least gain some space in front of the US. Every report says every time, we always, as a journalist, I've been seeing this for years at least, that Europe, or more precisely, European Union, continues to lose ground in the global race for, well, supporting and developing technologies. We are behind US in expenditure and growth in sectors such as biotechnology, digital economy, AI, although we have now new plans for the future. And recent studies show that European Union is neither represented in the group of the top 20 tech companies, nor in the top 20 startups. I was looking at this information, and I think it's important to note that. The report from Mario Draghi, of course, highlights the importance of creating a connected collaboration strategy and execution to pave the way for innovation and scalability. But in more than 30 years, I think that I've seen a lot of reports, a lot of strategic
We are very
plans.
good at that. We have a good reputation for.
Yeah, and a lot of these strategic plans, and the question is how to put it in place, and what can we do with good ideas and bring new ideas to become really an innovative ecosystem in Europe. Cristina.
I can for sure start. So, like, when we look at what do we need to build a successful company, there's 3 or 4 aspects that are very important. First one being people, and I think we have very good technical universities, like we are flexible, agile. Probably Sam can tell us a little bit more about his experience, but I would say Portuguese employees are a great asset when you're building like a tech company. But then you also need 2 other things where like we need to work on. First one is capital. In Europe, there's still lack of capital to get these companies past a certain stage. I think we are generally good at the early stage. We can write pre-seed, seed, Series A checks, but then like real dry power in order to conquer a market and go as fast as possible, the size of the funds in Europe, right now there's a couple of funds like 500 million, 700 million, but the really big funds that can put a lot of money on companies are still in the US. So capital is one, like we lack the capital to create bigger success stories. And the other one is markets. The reason why tackling Portugal as a target market for a tech company is a terrible idea is because we don't have a lot of money, it's only 10 million people, like not the greatest strategy. But when we look at Europe as a single market, that's something we have been pitching over and over, but it's not a reality. If we want to grow in Europe, like it's still country by country most of the times, or at least we need to pay attention to the cultural differences, like how do you, what should the go-to-market strategy be for Spain, which is different than Germany, than the UK, than France. So that is a barrier, especially when we compare to the US. Of course, the US is like not, like it's a big country, so there's a lot of differences between the states and so on, but still, it's one market. So it's way easier. So I would say these two, like, when we talk about, can we replicate the US in Europe somehow? I'm not even sure it's possible, because it's very different. It's a very different environment. It's a very different dynamics between the countries. So yeah, like, I guess the differences come from these two aspects. The capital one can be improved. The single market, of course. But we've been talking about this, I mean, maybe for 20 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, we still didn't move a lot.
Yeah, it's true. Sam, you have the experience from both sides of the Atlantic. Do you agree with Christina that these are the both main factors that keep Europe still behind?
I completely agree. In fact, we could probably just wrap the session. I think she said it very, very eloquently. One challenge on the people front that really, drives me insane as an immigrant in Portugal and someone I moved here to open up the Lisbon office, and now we're over 300 people. And the talent that we find here in Portugal is incredible. The vast majority of our team members inside of the Lisbon office are Portuguese. But of course, the whole of the country is about the same population as Metro Houston, where I'm from in Texas. And so sometimes if you really want to think about, I still take the way out of Texas. Sometimes if you really want to think about building incredible teams, you want, great people from Portugal, great people from Germany, great people from France. And that's so hard to do. I'll give you a few examples. I just had to renew my residency permit, and it took months. And I had to go to Coimbra and Guarda to get it done. If you think about trying to recruit a really incredible engineer, if you're starting this company inside of Portugal and you need some specialist engineer, senior engineer from Germany you're trying to bring to Portugal, well, if you're starting a company in Texas and that engineer's in New York, it's pretty easy for them just to come to Texas. It's the same language. Their phone plan stays the same. Their bank account stays the same. They can send their kids to public school the next day. If you're bringing somebody from Germany or another country, they have to restart their entire lives. And so not only do you have this challenge of it's really more of a common currency, it's not a common market if you want to scale from Portugal out to serve other countries in the EU. If you also want to assemble an incredible team, that first point that Christina mentioned about people, it's really hard because you're kind of convincing everyone to come to Portugal to restart their entire lives, which from personal experience, it's worth it. I adoro Portugal. I love it here, and I want to be here a very long time, but it's really tough. And I think if there are ways that we can find to make that easier to build great teams in an incredible place like Portugal, and the capital will follow the great teams. And there still needs to be a lot of work done to make it, whether it's some of the taxes or regulation, more incentivized to kind of have an exit here in Portugal or inside of the EU. But if you can get incredible teams together here, I think some of those things will follow. And that's a struggle that I've seen that's true here that's just not true in the US.
Yeah, the truth is that we are talking about a unified, Europe, but still a lot of differences between every country, not only language, not only culture, but also regulation and so on. Luís, you are now, as a chairman of General Assembly, leading the ESNA, Europe Startup Nations Alliance. So the word alliance, I would like to strengthen it, because Europe Alliance and the idea of getting everyone together to support startups, how do you see it?
I just want to start by saying that I made a promise to Diogo that I would be contrarian, and being contrarian in this environment is saying good things about Portugal. So and about Europe. And
I'm not saying bad things about
I know. But I'm going to be the contrarian anyway. I think the point is, I was a Europe basher, if you will. I was like that meme on LinkedIn, like Europe regulates, the US innovates, and China imitates. Like I was all for it like a year ago. But then there was something dawned on me, and I think that we are getting somewhere closer to the single market. So when I started working a few years ago, I remember that one of the things that made the European market a single market was the Markets in Financial Instruments Directive. So basically making a unified single market in financial services. That worked pretty well. And a good example of that, to the contrary, is Brexit. It was a huge issue for the UK because they lost that. And then I was at Wharton for a couple of weeks in October last year, and I was in a closed event talking about crypto assets. And basically, I had the 40 biggest CLOs in the crypto world saying, we don't have a MiCA, so a market in crypto assets regulation, but we would like to have it. But we don't say outside of this room. I thought, that's clever. That's clever. And then I got talking to US lawyers in Canada and in the US, and they said, well, we hate the AI Act. The European AI Act stifles innovation, blah, blah, blah. But effectively, we have 300 pieces of state legislation in AI in the US. So it's going to be a patchwork. So the US being a single market, I could carve out a number of sectors that are not actually true. It's not true in fintech. It's not true in healthcare. It's not true in education. So it's not, what they're really, really, really amazing at is always focusing on the good side of it. And also then I started thinking there was this huge issue about a petition about the European company. So building upon having a single corporate entity pan-European wide. If that comes to fruition, and that's on the agenda for 2025, and that's what one of the things that we're working on at ESNA, I think that will make a huge impact. And to Sam's and Christina's point, capital will follow. The question that Sam was talking about, teams, I think it's really, really complicated to solve. Different languages, different cultures, making a new life for yourself in a new country within the European Union, that's complicated. And I think that's very complicated to work on. Capital and being effectively a single market, step by step, I'm way more bullish today than I was a year ago.
It's good to be bullish about Europe and Portugal.
And it's the lawyer being
also,
bullish. You have to take that into account, okay? We're hardwired not to be bullish about anything.
Yeah. Okay, so you are hardwired to be at least bullish about this area,
Yeah.
so it's good. One of the things that we see is that the European Commission now has a new initiative, also new instruments to fund or to invest in some companies. Do you think that there is a new sense of urgency in Europe, also because we see some measures from the other side of the Atlantic with the new Trump administration? Can you comment on
I can, and I think it's 100%, 150% true. I think Europe finally realized that the Trump administration is not going to be supportive, and I think that's a huge plus for Europe to get its act right, honestly. I think it's the single best push that Europe has had, is the turmoil around the first 28 days of the Trump administration. Honestly, we needed that. We were lagging behind significantly. I hope we manage to catch up soon. We're not 70 years away into an ecosystem such as Silicon Valley with the DARP and all of that, but we're lagging, we're trailing behind, 100% agree with that, but I think this push from Trump is actually a very, very good signal for us. Either we get our act together, or we will be left behind significantly. And I think everyone is feeling that.
And feeling that is not enough, because everything looks good on paper, and sometimes it's just, as we say, it makeup. So we move some lines here or there. But even if we think that money will follow talent, or will follow the economy, or will follow good ideas, Christina, you have a lot of experience in this area. How can venture capitalists or initiatives to support startups be more strong to support in Europe new startups?
So I'm a big believer that good ideas always get funded and find the capital they need to grow. So first of all, I mean, sometimes we like to give ourselves excuses about no, there's not enough money, like I can't do this because of X, Y, Z. I don't think that's true. I mean, at Indico, we've been operating for like more or less 5 years. We've invested in 50 companies already. We deployed around 65 million, and our companies went on to raise $1.8 billion.
Wow.
So, like,
Great numbers.
And we don't have enough capital to put out there. Like, imagine
Imagine if you would.
So, like, I think there's now also new opportunities in Europe because, I mean, like, Trump and his administration is going to an extreme, like, and I think in some instances, the world is playing a lot like Silicon Valley and the startup world, where everything is about short-term gains, which is wrong. In Europe, we tend to look at things more long-term. We still care about people. Like I think the entire social aspects of Europe play a very, very important role in like this era we are going through. And there's a lot of opportunities also for digital-first companies to play. And let's not forget about AI. I think AI is fundamentally changing the way companies operate. Yeah. Like, if we look at Europe versus the US versus China, the pace at which maybe the US or maybe China is evolving super fast, Europe is still trying to understand what's going on. But for us to be competitive, we need to fundamentally change the way we work, adopt automation as much as possible. That will lead to us reskilling people. I think we were having this discussion maybe 10 years ago, and it was a little bit of a theoretical exercise. But now, these things are here right now. And sense of urgency is something very, very important. I think the worst that can happen, and we see it in like sectors from a more traditional sectors like automotive and so on, like we look and like the sector is changing a lot. Like we don't want to be caught in the same type of situation in other sectors just because we try to do the same old thing in a manual way, not deploying technology to make us all more efficient and make our jobs more meaningful. So there's lots of opportunity in Europe. There's lots of opportunities for new companies to come and solve and deploy technology in sectors that are more less digital, let's put it like that. So again, I'm very bullish.
Yeah, but just to keep it clear, are you in favor of strong regulation? Because we were talking about, of course, regulation is never sexy. No one likes regulation, especially if you are trying to start something. You look at all those papers and you think, oh my God, do I have to read all this? Do I have to comply with all this? Lawyers love.
Yeah,
no?
you put it on ChatGPT now.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, okay, I'll respond very clearly. I think having generic regulation is not good. We need regulation, but that already exists more on a sector-by-sector basis. Like, if I want to deploy AI in a bank, the banks are heavily regulated. They will know what's possible and what's not. I think, like, trying to regulate AI more broadly, it becomes very challenging. That's why this discussion is a never-ending discussion. Yeah. So
it keeps us behind.
I'm in favor of regulation. It's needed, but we need to be careful with the heavy lifting we are asking companies, especially small companies, to do. That can really hurt us as a region.
A region and stop the innovation. Sam, what do you think? I miss Diogo because Diogo would say some very clear things about this topic. But I'm sure that, Sam, you already have regulation is not really a very sexy thing, and technology might be hurt, or innovation might be hurt with
Especially
it.
as an American. Do you look at us and what do you think of us all?
No, I love y'all. You outnumbered me. Very scared. No, there's another side, though. If you think about Europe and regulation, that comes with something that for the life of me, since I've lived here, I simply cannot understand. And that's a strong social safety net. So if you think about a lot of places that have a lot of regulation, they have a strong social safety net. But again, I cannot fathom why failure in Europe is so anathema. Because if you talk to an American, and they tell you, my startup failed, everyone's like, oh, that's such great news. Come right this way. Let us fund you again. Let us give you more money. Come work for us because you've learned, had some great experience. Where you talked to a lot of, I'm sure you talked to way more than I do, potential founders in Europe. They're like, well, I'm really scared. I might fail. And I can't understand that because in America, if your startup fails, you might not be able to go to the hospital. You don't have health insurance anymore. There's really no social safety net in most of America. And I don't understand why that's not a competitive advantage inside of Europe where this fear of failure is such a powerful way to persuade people against trying something when the outcome of your failure tactically is actually much softer than in a place like America where you literally might be bankrupt if you break your leg the next day after your startup fails and you lose your health insurance. The other thing, I was having lunch with a group of friends yesterday. One of them is a German who's here, and he was talking about the inverse, where in Europe, if you start a company and you really succeed, everyone looks at you and says, kind of suspicious. Who did you wrong in order to get there? Why are you successful and everyone else is not? Whereas, of course, in America, probably too much, we celebrate the founders and the success stories. And I don't have a good solution to this, obviously. So yes, regulation as an American, as a Texan, is kind of I'm allergic to. But in general, you think if you're going to have that regulation, it does come with some bonus. And I think that's that strong social safety net. And I can't for the life of me understand why that's not something that encourages more founders other than this fear of failure and then this kind of skepticism of success.
That's a cultural thing. Do you think that we should get an injection to get more, something like that, or develop a vaccine or something?
I think we need more role models, to be honest.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like
100%.
we need more role models, and we need more people that fail to put their stories out there.
Yeah.
And also, you need to see your mates being filthy rich because they had stock options.
Yeah.
That's really relevant. I always like
No, you
having,
like the stock options contracts. I prefer them to start companies. So
no, I know, okay, but having a local tribe,
Yeah.
like where you can have like the network effect of local tribes springing about
Yes.
in a given jurisdiction, it's incredibly relevant. You really see people like starting to change away the way they look into success in a different way if you start seeing a lot of people
Yes.
getting that as well. And so I think we need to get there. But again, very early. We're 10 years into this.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I want us to make to be as good as possible. But 10 years in an ecosystem is fairly scarce, I would say.
Yeah. Well, fairly scarce, but with more results.
But I'm hoping a lot. I'm very optimistic about second-time founders and third-time founders getting, like Christina, for instance, is obviously an insanely positive role model where people see that she's done Talkdesk, she's done cleverly, and basically exited, and now she's doing venture capital. We need more of Christina. We need more of Jörg. We need more people that do this on a very regular basis.
Yeah,
And we still don't have it.
we still don't have it, but it's not easy. And I'm sure in this very full room, there's a lot of good ideas that want to get there and to become new Christinas. If we can clone Christina, perhaps, I don't know.
Christina is trying to invest in other Christinas, so she's doing her job.
Great. We are lacking, behind of time. We have just 3 minutes, and I think probably we could focus here on getting some advice to the people here and what should they do, where they can get more money, where they can bet on something. Please advise us. That's good to finish up this very good panel. I don't know, Luis, can you start? Christina, who is the one who put up?
I mean, sense of urgency. I think Luis is like, no, we have time. I mean, start now.
didn't say
not
that.
starting.
I didn't say you were
the
not
worst
for
thing that can happen is like you learn a lot of things and you move on and you go like Social Security will take care of you. So like if you have an idea and you feel like starting, go. But please focus on the problem you're solving. Like, what is the big problem you're solving, and is that enough for someone to pay you to do that?
Good.
These are my questions.
Sam.
To answer.
Just 2 things. One, please don't be afraid of failure. In most cultures, certainly the place where you have the most successful startups historically in America, failure is celebrated, and I'd love to see that be something that in a kind of a silly way is echoed in other places. And the second is, there's never been a better time, you mentioned this a bit, to try to go build something. I mean, there's not an idea that you have that you couldn't go prototype this afternoon between a combination of the tools that are available essentially for free on the internet right now. And so go chase that problem, try to prototype it, see if somebody would pay you money. If you expanded it, just get started.
Good.
Yeah, I work with founders 100% of my time. So there's a pattern really that like the ones that are obsessed with the problem, the ones that are obsessed with the market, the ones that study it really, really hard are the successful ones. They're not the most agreeable ones, I would say. That's another trait of good founders. They're not very interested in whether people like them or not. They want to get the job done. And there's a pattern that I recognize in the founders, the successful ones I work with. So if you have those traits in you, just go ahead. There's a lot of networking in Europe as of today. Having said that, and going into Christina's point, the sense of urgency is 100% there. I want everyone to run, because in Europe we're lagging behind. We already have a lot to do.
Great recommendations. I was hoping that you also talked about one thing that I think sometimes is lacking in startup companies, because people are focused on technology, on the problem they are solving. They are not that good at scaling up, and sometimes that might be also a problem. I don't know if you think so, Christina.
I mean, the scaling up, yes, but I would say if you crack solving a problem that's meaningful, I think then the role of the founder is also to get people that are better than you at doing that, especially for the average Portuguese startup. Founders are typically way better on the product side of things than engineering. And we need to accept, if we look at all of the success cases coming out of Portugal, at least one of the founders went to the US early on in order to be able to hire the best people in sales and marketing.
Yes.
And we shouldn't pretend that like we need to be better to do very well on like every single thing. It's not about building everything in Portugal. That would be amazing, but the fact that the ecosystem is like maybe 10 years old, there's still not enough people that are very good at scaling B2B SaaS sales or marketing. So what do we do if we want to be category leaders in the space we operate in? We go to the US, or we go to the UK, or we go to where these people are. I think we need to accept that. And I mean, like, I don't want to ask Luis, probably doesn't have the numbers, but like, how many good cases you handle versus things that don't go well? Like, it's.
I don't know. I'm not scientific about it. I should be scientific about it, but I'm not.
It's a good statistic
It's a good statistic to have. I don't have it.
Because we typically look at the good cases.
I could wing it and say 50%, but it would be a lie. I have no idea what that's true.
So, I see in our portfolio companies, like, we need to be very well aware of our limitations and find creative ways. Founders sometimes stay for too long in their comfort zone, and they need to understand if they want to like be category leaders, they need to hire people that are way better than themselves. So,
I think that's a very good message, and we now finish the time, and we have a very good panel after us. So, thank you so much for everything, for your vision, and please a round of applause to our speakers. Nice to see you.